What is up, Packers fans, and welcome back to Packer Report TV. I am your host and the publisher of that very website, Ross Uglem. And today we are back. It is the Packer Report TV Fantasy and Gambling Corner. And I got to tell you, we got to start by tooting our own horn a little bit. Last week, we gave you Malik Willis over 0.5 passing touchdowns, a touchdown to Wicks, of course, made that one a winner. We gave you the Bills plus 125. They destroyed the Dolphins. Obviously, you don't get any extra money for being super correct, but boy, that one was nailed. We told you to start Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs goes over 150 yards. And then we told you to sit George Pickens. George Pickens, getting the Patrick Surtain treatment from the Broncos, ends up with 2 catches for 29 yards. And guys, that's 4-0. We were so close from going 5-0. The Seahawks obviously cover the first leg of that parlay. I told you to hit the under. It goes over in overtime. We were a point away from going 5-0, including a parlay hit. Last week was spectacular. So let's dive right into this week and try and help you guys out with your fantasy teams, or just putting a few extra dollars in your pocket in the gambling corner. All right. So we always try to have a Packers flavor. We're going to continue that. I know it kind of narrows the scope a little bit. I don't know that I would behave this way if it was, my money or what we were, if I was in a sports book, would I always, bet something that has to do with the Packers? But it's the Packer Report TV fantasy and gambling corner. So we're going to have something that has to do with the Green Bay Packers week in and week out here. I'm taking Josh Jacobs over 74.5 yards. I think if this doesn't happen, the game down in Tennessee is going to go very poorly for the Green Bay Packers. I think without Marshawn Lloyd, not that he was a huge part of the plan, but, Emmanuel Wilson, to me, has a very specific role. I'm sure the Marshawn Lloyd carries will probably go to Emmanuel Wilson. Or frankly, they very well may go to Jaden Reed. But right now, you're at, I think 20 to 25 carries is just a lock for Josh Jacobs without Malik Willis. You had a bazillion carries last week and 48 total carries on the season. Well, if you just get 3.5 yards per carry, let's say it's 22 carries. If you can do 22 carries at 3.5 yards per, that's 77 yards, your bet will hit. And that's if things are really, really inefficient. They haven't been inefficient. And if Jacobs gets close to 30 carries again, it's a wrap. They're not going to rush for 2.5. He's not going to rush for 2.5 yards a carry. They're just not. He's been better than that. They've been better than that. The design is better than that. And by volume, I just think Josh Jacobs over 74.5 yards is a great bet. Tonight, we rolled last week on Thursday Night Football, the day that the gambling corner came out. We gave you something for TNF, Bills plus 125. I like the Jets -6 over the Patriots tonight. I think the Pats are impressive in relation to like preseason expectations. Gerard Mayo is coaching them up, especially on defense. I think he's doing a good job. I think it's a tough ask for New England on the road, prime time, short week, Aaron Rodgers back in front of the home fans. I think they're probably the other thing is I think the Jets defense is probably embarrassed right now a little bit after their performances. This Patriots offense is an easy target. You kind of tell me I just need Aaron Rodgers to win by a touchdown at home when the other team's quarterback is Jacoby Brissett. And Jacoby Brissett is going against Robert Saleh, Sauce Gardner, and the Jets. I think that Jets defense is going to have something to prove. I think that Jets offense, while I think it was a little bit overrated, I think folks probably looked at it kind of like a fantasy team and, oh my gosh, this guy and Breece Hall and holy cow. And, obviously it hasn't worked that way yet. They've been just okay. But I think against the Patriots, I could definitely see something like, 27-17, 30-17, 30-21, something like that, something where you're covering 6. I think the Jets roll a little bit and it just becomes sort of a slippery slope, if you will, when Jacoby Brissett is your quarterback and there's just that much pressure on the defense. And I think there will be a lot of pressure on the New England Patriot defense tonight. Vikings plus 2.5, and that almost makes me want to throw up just saying it out loud. I know everybody loves the Texans. Everybody loves C.J. Stroud. This Vikings team is winning games right now. They just won as an outright home dog over the San Francisco 49ers. I think most folks believe, I don't know if they still believe, it's certainly going into the season, I think most folks believe San Francisco to be a top 2 or 3 team in the National Football League. And I'm not saying that part of it's necessarily over, but people always also thought like the Vikings were going to pick in the top 10 in this upcoming draft. So for the Vikings to beat the Niners straight up, injuries, no injuries, whatever, that sort of sent a message. And so for me, Sam Darnold hasn't turned back into a pumpkin. That may be coming. But right now, I will take the Vikings if you're going to give me points at home at noon. The one guy that I'm a little bit worried about in this whole formula, though, is Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs is, has nothing nice to say about his time in Minnesota and kind of his exit from there. Performed well against the Vikings in that crazy Vikings win in Buffalo. But I don't believe Diggs had ever returned to Minnesota at all as a Buffalo Bill. This is an opportunity to go back to U.S. Bank, Minneapolis Miracle, all those things. I think just out of raw spite, there is a chance that Stephon Diggs ruins this bet for me. Fantasy plays. Speaking of sacrilege, I just gave you the Vikings as a pick. I'm seeing Caleb Williams ranked between like 16 and 20 at quarterback this week. I really like Caleb Williams this weekend as a fantasy quarterback. I think he's been very underwhelming, but so have the Colts on defense. You saw what Green Bay probably should have done to that group. They probably should have been at 17 points very early in that game with a quarterback that you basically assume couldn't throw. Now, Green Bay schemed up and did all right, but you had a one-dimensional offense that probably should have been at 17 points about 16 minutes into the game. Or I can't remember when the Jacobs fumble was, but that Green Bay should have run away with that thing, and they were in control the entire time. I think there's a chance last week that they just gave Keenan Allen the week off to get better, right? I know he's questionable going into the game. Maybe they're like, all right, let's save you for the next week. Let's give you, a full 2-week break. It's a heel thing. Keenan Allen maybe comes back, and here's the big deal. Here's the big deal for me. Buckner's not going to play in this game. DeForest Buckner's not going to play in this game. And so in general, I think the Colts kind of lack the pass rush to constantly have Caleb on his backside in the way that, the Texans and just we've seen Caleb constantly on his backside. I don't know that the Colts have that pass rush punch. When we talk about, or I've talked about what my concerns with Caleb Williams as a player, and I'm not ready to put dirt on his grave or anything like that, but my concerns about Caleb Williams as a player have a lot to do with him running around, dancing, doing all the crazy stuff he did at Oklahoma and at USC. Well, I think he might have time to do that this week. I don't know that the Colts can get after him. And then these Colts are so beat up in the secondary. We as Packer fans make fun of all of what was said about, the Bears have 3 WR1s and they're going to blah, blah, blah. And Torrey Taylor's not going to punt and all those things. Well, I don't know, with as much time as I think Caleb Williams will have to throw against Indy, I have my concerns that these Colts defensive backs can actually cover more. Dunze, Kmet, Keenan Allen, if he plays. I think this is a bounce back week from a fantasy perspective for Caleb Williams. I don't know if I'd move him into my top 12. I probably would. I think I would move him into my top 12. So if you're 12-team league, you own Caleb Williams. I think you play him this week against the Colts. More sacrilege, as you can see. Check out my link for homage. These t-shirts are incredibly soft. Really enjoying my partnership with them. There should be a link in the podcast description or the video description if you're here with us on YouTube. But I do not have interest in starting Christian Watson in fantasy football unless Jordan Love is the Packers quarterback. You saw, I think, Love target Watson in the end zone 3 times in week 1. That's huge for fantasy purposes. Scoring is huge for fantasy purposes. I don't know that is their red zone plan at all. With Malik Willis at quarterback, you saw, Josh Jacobs should have scored. They're running quick game to Dontavion Wicks. They could have thrown it to Jaden Reed. I don't know how much Watson's going to be involved. I think they might be protecting him from a health perspective because Bo Melton and Jaden Reed seem to be getting some of the manufactured touches that used to go to Christian Watson, your jet sweeps, your handoffs, your push passes, things of that nature. Christian seems to be less involved in that. So if he's and also like the safety blanket throws are basically all the Romeo Dobbs. All the gotta have it throws from Malik Willis are to Romeo Dobbs. So until Jordan Love comes back, and I still have all the faith in the world in Christian Watson, but until Romeo Dobbs comes back, Christian might just be blocking his ass off again, which I think it's going to contribute to winning football. I don't know that it's going to contribute to your fantasy football team. Guys, thanks so much for watching or listening. If you are on the podcast side, I am at Ross Uglem on X, formerly known as Twitter. We are at Packer Report 66. Have a great rest of your day and go Pack Go.